An old woman decides to disappear, not to die, to vanish. She cuts herself out of every photograph. She empties her closet, deletes her files, scrapes her name off 66 years of life until there is nothing left to find. Her grown son calls her oldest friend in a panic, and that friend, a woman named Elena, does something stranger than grief. She gets angry. "We'll see who wins this time," she says to herself. She turns on her computer and she begins to write down every detail of their story from the very beginning. Because the one thing her friend cannot erase is the person who remembers her. This is my brilliant friend. And by the end, you'll understand why the title is a trick and why a pair of handmade shoes carried into a wedding will break a life in a single silent glance. To understand the friendship, you have to stand in the neighborhood that made it. A poor district on the edge of Naples in the 1950s. Courtyards of cracked cement, stairwells that smell of anger, whole families packed into 2 rooms. Here, love is loud and violence is louder. Fathers throw furniture, debts are settled with fists, and everyone speaks in dialect because proper Italian belongs to the people on the other side of the tunnel, the people who get to leave. Over all of it hangs one name that makes children lower their voices: Don Achille, the loan shark, the black market king, the ogre of the fairy tale who, the mothers whisper, will stuff a bad child into his enormous black bag. And 2 6-year-old girls decide, one gray afternoon, that they are going to climb his stairs and look him in the eye. Their names are Elena and Lila. Elena is careful, obedient, desperate to be liked. Lila is thin, fierce, and a little frightening, the kind of child who does the thing everyone else only imagines. Each girl owns one treasure, a doll. Elena's is named Tina. Lila's is new. They play beside the grate of Don Achille's cellar, that black mouth in the ground. And then Lila does something Elena never forgives and never forgets. She looks Elena in the eye and drops Tina through the grate into the dark. Heart pounding, Elena does the only thing that makes sense in the logic of childhood. She drops new in after it. What you do, I do. Both dolls are gone. And Lila says, with total, chilling certainty, Don Achille took them. He has them in his black bag. So they go to get them back. Hand in hand, Elena would remember that grip her whole life. The 2 girls climb the forbidden stairs and knock on the ogre's door. And the fairy tale breaks. Don Achille is not a monster with a bag. He is a heavy, ordinary man, annoyed and then oddly moved by 2 trembling children accusing him of stealing dolls. He reaches into his pocket. He gives them money, enough to buy new dolls, and tells them to remember it was a gift from him. They walk back down the stairs shaking, richer, and confused. It is the first lesson the neighborhood teaches them, and they will spend their whole lives failing to learn it. The monsters here are only people, and the people, when it counts, are the monsters. They don't buy dolls. They buy a book, Little Women, and read it until it falls apart, because it holds an impossible idea that a girl could write a story, and the story could make her rich, and money could carry her out of the neighborhood for good. And there is one child who seems built to do exactly that. In school, Lila is a comet. She taught herself to read before anyone else. She does sums in her head that leave the teacher, Maestra Oliviero, speechless. Elena works twice as hard just to come second. It should have poisoned the friendship. Instead, it became its engine. Elena discovered that the way to be more was to stay close to Lila, to run inside the light she threw. But brilliance in this neighborhood is a dangerous thing for a poor girl to own. Lila proves it. At 10 years old, in a school notebook, she writes a novel, 10 pages she calls The Blue Fairy, and hands it to Elena, who reads it like scripture and carries it in her heart for decades. Surely, Elena thinks, the teacher will crown her. But Maestra Oliviero says nothing about it. Not one word of praise. Because the teacher has already made her choice, and it isn't Lila. She takes Elena aside and delivers a sentence that will divide 2 friends like a blade. Forget Cerullo and think of yourself. Forget Lila. The plebs, the poor, the ones who stay, will only drag you down. The most gifted child in the neighborhood has just been quietly written off, and her only crime is being born to a father who cannot be argued with. That father is Fernando the shoemaker, and the argument arrives on schedule. Elena's family, poor as they are, scrapes together the money to send her on to middle school. Lila's father will not. Shoes need mending. There's no cash for Latin. A girl's cleverness is a luxury the Cerullos cannot afford. Lila fights. She teaches herself Latin in secret out of Elena's borrowed books, just to prove she doesn't need the school at all. And for a terrifying stretch, she outpaces Elena anyway, from the outside, with no teacher. But the door is closed. One girl walks through the tunnel each morning toward an education. The other stays behind with the leather and the awls. From this moment, their two lives become a pair of lines pulling slowly apart. And the whole story is the question of which line rises. And then the neighborhood reminds them what it really is. Don Achille, the ogre who turned out to be only a man, is stabbed to death in his own kitchen, a knife in his neck, his blood on the copper pots. No one is ever sure who did it. Suspicion lands on a carpenter drowning in debt to him, but the truth stays buried, the way most truths here stay buried. Lila is transfixed. She makes Elena tell and retell the killing until it becomes a private myth between them, because she has understood something early, something the school will never teach, that beneath the fairy tales and the courtships and the Sunday clothes, this whole place runs on violence, and everyone, sooner or later, is asked either to pay it or to become it. They are teenagers now, and the split has hardened into two different worlds. Elena rides the fear and the schoolwork like a swimmer fighting the current, nearly drowning in her first year, hauled back only because Oliviero bullies her parents into keeping her enrolled. Lila's world shrinks to her father's workshop, the smell of glue and hide, the ping of the little hammer. To anyone watching, it looks like the teacher was right after all. The clever one is being schooled, the wild one is being buried in a trade. But Lila has never once in her life accepted a role she was handed. Down among the offcuts and the scrap leather, she is already dreaming, and this time, her dream has a shape you can hold in your two hands. The dream is a shoe. Not a mended shoe, a new one. Invented, beautiful, unlike anything the neighborhood has ever made. Lila fills a hidden notebook with designs, men's and women's, drawn with the same ferocious precision she once gave to Latin. She pulls her older brother Reno into the plan. They will build a single pair by hand, in secret, and it will be the seed of a factory. Cerullo shoes, their own name over the door. The whole family carried out of poverty on the one thing they already know how to do. Their father scoffs. Handmade shoes, he says, are an art with no future. The world wants cheap, and it wants fast. But Lila has found her escape route at last, and this one doesn't need a teacher's permission. It only needs the neighborhood to leave her alone. The neighborhood will not leave her alone. Its new power isn't the dead ogre. It's the Solura brothers, Marcello and Michello, sons of the family that took over the loans and the bar, cruising the streets in a gleaming Fiat like it's a throne on wheels. To them, the girls of the district are merchandise on display. One day they slow the car beside a neighbor girl, Ada, and simply pull her inside for sport. Her brother Antonio comes running, and the Soleras beat him bloody in the street and drive off laughing. This is what money looks like here. Not freedom, but the freedom to take. And the brothers have noticed that the shoemaker's strange daughter has grown into the most striking girl in the neighborhood, which, in this world, is less a blessing than a target painted on her back. Then Marcello reaches for the wrong girl. Walking beside Lila, he grabs Elena's wrist over a cheap silver bracelet. Casual, entitled, certain no one will stop him. And Lila stops him. She snatches the shoemaker's knife from her father's bench, presses the blade to Marcello Solura's throat until it draws a single bead of blood, and tells him, very quietly, that if he ever touches her friend again, she will show him exactly what happens. She is 15. She weighs almost nothing, and she does not blink. In that instant, everyone understands who Lila really is. Not a prize to be picked up, but a force that will have to be broken. Marcello backs away, humiliated, and in the terrible logic of men like him, in love. He has decided he is going to marry her, and what Lila wants will not enter into it. The rivalry detonates, literally, one New Year's Eve. Up on the rooftops, the whole neighborhood fights its war with fireworks. Reno determined to outblast the Soleras, the sky screaming with color and gunpowder. And at the peak of it, the Soleras begin firing a gun into the dark, because for them, winning always means the real weapon hidden underneath the game. But something else happens to Lila that night. something that has nothing to do with the noise. Watching her brother turn feral, watching the whole world flare and boom, she feels the edges of things begin to dissolve. People, objects, her own brother losing their outlines and bleeding into one another. She tells no one for years. It is the first crack in her, the private terror underneath the fierce girl, the sense that reality itself is not solid and might come apart in her hands. But the shoe is real, and it is finished. In secret, over long months, Lila and Reno make and unmake that first pair, cutting, stitching, ruining their hands, chasing the drawing in the notebook until leather obeys it. When they finally reveal it to their father, braced for his rage, Fernando goes silent instead. He turns the shoe over in his hands, a whole lifetime of the craft in his fingers, and he approves. For one bright moment, the dream is alive, there on the workbench. Proof, in leather and thread, that Lila was right and the world was wrong. The Cerullo shoe exists. All it needs now is money to become a factory. And in this neighborhood, money has only ever meant one thing. It means the men with the car. It means letting the wolves invest. Marcelo Solara comes courting, and he brings the whole future with him. His family's wealth could build the factory overnight. Lila's parents can hardly breathe at the prospect. A Solara, choosing their daughter, is more than they ever dared dream. And Lila says no, not shyly, not strategically. She tells them that to call Marcelo an animal would be an insult to animals, and she means it to the bone. She would rather drown than be bought by the men who fire guns to win a game. It is the bravest thing in the book, and you already sense the most doomed, because a poor girl who refuses the powerful has not escaped them. She has only made them wait. And while Lila fights for her freedom at home, Elena is about to taste hers for the very first time, far away, across the water. Elena wins a summer on the island of Ischia, sent to the sea to build up her health, and away from the neighborhood for the first time in her life, she blooms. The salt, the sun, the quiet. Her skin clears, her body changes, and she catches herself in a mirror and for once doesn't flinch. She is not Lila's shadow here, not the second best girl running to keep up. She is simply herself on a beach at the beginning of something. And walking that same beach is a boy she has loved since she was small. Niño Saratordi, serious and dark-eyed and full of ideas too big for the neighborhood. On the island, for a few weeks, it is Elena who gets to be the brilliant one. It is the happiest Elena has ever been, and it is almost enough. Nino talks to her the way no one at home ever has, as if her mind matters, as if she might truly do something with it. On his last evening, he leans in and kisses her lightly once, on the mouth, and she carries the print of it like a coal held in her palm. This, she thinks, is the life on the other side of the tunnel, books and the sea, and a boy who reads. She is 15, and everything is finally opening, which is precisely the moment the neighborhood follows her across the water, wearing the face of the one person she should have been able to trust. Nino's father is Donato Seratore, a railway man who fancies himself a poet, the same charming, hollow man who once wrecked a neighbor woman's mind with his attentions and walked away clean. In the dark of the sleeping house, he comes to the room where Elena lies, and a girl who trusted a grown man learns exactly what that trust is worth. Ferrante never sensationalizes it. She lets us feel only the horror of it, the paralysis, the shame that always lands on the wrong person, the way a predator can wear the face of a kindly family friend right up until the instant he doesn't. At first light, Elena flees the island, carrying the wound home in silence. Her first taste of freedom ends the way so much in this book does, with a powerful man taking whatever he decides is his. Back in the neighborhood, the walls are closing on Lila, Marcelo still circling, her father wearing down, when rescue arrives from the last direction anyone could have expected. Stefano Carracci, the grocer, the gentle, prosperous son of Don Achille himself, the dead ogre's boy, grown up soft-spoken and rich. Stefano doesn't just want Lila, he seems to understand her. He asks to see the secret notebook of designs, and instead of laughing, he has the drawings framed like art on his wall. He offers to fund the Cerullo factory. He offers, in other words, everything the dream needs, delivered by the son of the childhood monster. And Lila, cornered and dazzled and coldly calculating all at once, makes the choice that will define the rest of her life. She chooses Stefano. When Stefano asks her father for her hand, Lila answers with a single level word in front of them all. Yes. Then she does the dangerous thing herself. She seeks out Marcello Solora and tells him to his face that she loves Stefano and that he must never come near her again. For one breathless moment, it looks like a clean victory. Lila has refused the wolf, chosen the kind man, and rescued her family's dream, all in a single move. The strange, brilliant girl the teacher wrote off is about to become the wealthiest bride in the neighborhood, with her own shoes in the shop window. But look closely at what the escape actually costs. To get out, Lila is being married at 16, trading the notebook of a future she designed herself for a future a man is buying her. The engagement transforms everything. Money flows suddenly to the Cerullos. Lila steps out in new dresses, and the whole neighborhood recalibrates around her. The girl who was nothing is now the girl who is everything. And Elena watches from the other line of the story, still riding the bus to school, drowning in Latin and Greek under a demanding new teacher, poorer than ever, and suddenly, achingly, plainer than her radiant friend. She had believed that school was the way up. Now it looks like the slow way, the lonely way, while Lila took the fast one and won. The two girls who once dropped their dolls together into the dark have never been further apart, one rising on money, the other grinding on toward a diploma that no one at home even values. But the dream, up close, is already curdling. When the Cerullo shoes finally go into production, Stefano quietly overrules Lila's design, softening it, cheapening it, making it sellable, until the thing in the window is no longer the shoe she drew. And even so, through a whole Christmas season, not a single pair sells. The factory that was meant to carry the family out of poverty is a shop full of beautiful, unwanted shoes. Lila is learning the lesson the neighborhood teaches everyone eventually, that the moment your dream needs someone else's money, it stops being yours. She designed a way out. Now she is watching men turn it into just another way of being owned, and the wedding hasn't even happened yet. There is one thing Lila still believes she can control. Before the wedding, she makes Stefano swear an oath, an absolute, non-negotiable line. Marcello Solora will not set foot in her wedding. Not at the door, not at the back, nowhere. After everything, the knife, the refusal, the courtship she barely survived, she will not have the wolf in the room on the one day that is supposed to be entirely hers. And Stefano swears it, easily, lovingly, completely. And Lila lets herself believe him, because a bride has to believe in something. It is the last thing she asks for as a free woman. Hold on to that promise. The whole book is about to turn on the single question of whether it was ever kept. On the morning of the wedding, Elena helps Lila to dress, and here, at last, the title of the book arrives. And it is not what you have been assuming. You have spent this whole story taking my brilliant friend to mean Lila, the comet, the genius, the one who dazzles. But it is Lila who says it to Elena in the steam of the bath, half-dressed, minutes from being married off. Don't ever stop studying, she tells her. I'll give you the money. You're my brilliant friend. You have to be the best of all, boys and girls. Read that again. The girl being sold into a marriage is handing her stolen future to her friend and naming that friend the brilliant one. Lila understands exactly what is being done to her, and she is spending her last free breath making certain that at least one of them gets out. The wedding is the whole neighborhood crammed into one hall. The good dresses, the loud toasts, the careful, invisible map of who is allowed to sit near whom. And Elena, watching from her table, has a thought that lands on her like cold water. She had believed that education and manners and proper Italian would one day lift her above all of this. But looking around the room, the vulgarity, the money, the barely buried violence dressed up in Sunday best, she sees the truth of where she comes from and cannot climb out of. The plebs, she realizes, were us. There is no clean escape, no tunnel that leads to a different kind of person. Even Lila, the bride in white at the head of the room, is not above it. And then the door at the back of the hall opens. Marcello Solora walks in. The one man Stefano swore would never come, strolling into the wedding, welcomed, seated, loosening his tie like he owns the place. And as Lila's eyes travel slowly down, the whole book detonates in a single silent image. On Marcello's feet are the Cerullo shoes for men, not the cheap production model, the very first pair. The prototype she and Reno made by hand, unmaking and remaking it for months until their fingers bled. Her husband of a few hours has taken the one true thing she ever created and handed it to the wolf, as a token and a deal between men. The oath was a lie from the start. Lila goes as white as her wedding dress, her eyes narrowing to cracks, and the book ends right there, on a bride realizing, in the middle of her own wedding, that she has already been sold. Now go back to the old woman erasing herself. 60 years later, that fierce girl has spent an entire lifetime being taken from her genius, her shoes, her marriage, her choices, until at last she decides that the only thing left to control is her own disappearance, to vanish so completely that the neighborhood can never claim her again. And her friend answers with the one act of defiance that erasure cannot beat. Elena writes it all down. The dolls, the door, the notebook, the shoes, every last detail, so that Lila can never be deleted. That is the trick hidden in the title. My brilliant friend is Lila's name for Elena, but the book itself is Elena's name for Lila. Two women who spent their whole lives insisting against a world that valued neither of them, that the other one was the brilliant one. And in the end, remembering is the only escape that ever truly works.